So thanks everybody for coming. This is the meeting to talk about housing and community character. The format of these meetings is pretty frequent. It's really just a discussion. Here to pick y'all's brain a little bit. I'm Brian. I'm the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative. We're the consultants here helping y'all do a zoning ordinance update and get that synced up with your 2040 plan, comprehensive plan. So if we could just go around real quick and do introductions and then get started.
Oh, hi, I'm Cody. I grew up out here, right across the street on Chester Road. I'm currently here representing Camp Marymount, which is a nonprofit camp out on Town 100. Seeing where we can get involved and work in partnership with the city.
I'm Oliver Arney. I also grew up out here. Half my time spent on Cox Pike, the other half about the high school of Woodbridge. I don't live here anymore, but certainly want to have a voice and be a part of this community and still be active. I'm here representing 3 nonprofits, Camp Marymount, Boys and Girls Clubs, and The View. And so really excited. Yeah, I wish. But really excited to be out there. To be part of this community.
Maybe beers up on all points. You get a hug today?
Yeah.
Are you a farmer? A little bit, or you just hug farmers? We've had that hug.
Like farming,
Yeah. Where'd you get that? Action.
Tom Doherty, city manager, longtime resident.
Ray, I'm a resident of the city.
Where'd you come from? Oh, Gilbert. That's famous for the Supreme Court case about signage. Yeah. Just so you know, like all zoning ordinances, the signage had to be updated, signage section had to be updated because of the Supreme Court case where you basically can't regulate what people say on signs anymore. So pretty sure it's Gilbert.
My name's Marion. I live in Braxton Bed. I've been here in Fairview for 12, 15 years. If I had known, I didn't go to Spring Hill because of their road situation.
Yeah.
If I had known Fairview was going to end up this way, I had managed to.
How long have you been here?
About 12, 15 years.
Okay. So in that time, it's changed a good bit.
Oh, yes.
Got it.
And my daughter lives in Cumberland Estates, and it is horrible.
All right, we'll get there.
My name's Jay, and I live on number 4. I'm Stacy from Bellevue within the last year.
Wait.
And I feel here to what
Bellevue.
Like West Nashville.
Oh, there's an asylum called Bellevue as well.
She's here with her dog.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's not, if you're on the lam, that's not a good idea to just tell people like that. So,
My name's Brian Everett. I'm also from Bellevue, but I've lived for about 6 years out of Northwest Iowa.
Okay.
I'm Dave Fox. I live right in town, Fairview. I used to live in Franklin before there was anything up in Full Spring.
Oh, wow.
We
Just farms.
pitched dark from Brentwood all the way down to 96.
Wow.
I know a little bit about development. I'm not against development.
Change happened there, didn't it?
And I was at Columbia this morning, coming back up through. It is really backed up traffic.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Yes, sir.
Tommy Walker, live on Dogwood Drive, moved here from Bellevue in 1981.
Man, look, Bellevue's got something going on there. Yeah.
We've been here since 81. Right?
Yeah, we've been here a while.
Yeah. My husband, David Walker, we're just concerned about the growth of Fairview and all the density and going to be involved in that.
I'm Anna Blevins, and I'm a planner and project manager with TPUDC.
I'm Mackenzie Eberhardt. I'm an intern planner with TPUDC.
Okay. All right, so anybody who wants to, got 4 chairs left. So feel free.
I think we've got one more coming.
Oh.
Oh, maybe not.
No, just
He went that
another
way.
one. Yeah. All right, so what we want to talk about today is housing and community character. In the presentation and discussion last night, we talked about this idea of character a good bit, and kind of what is the character of Fairview, what is it today, what is it in the future. We talked about exponential growth that is coming to the county, and y'all are part of Williamson County. And so, you know, unless you do some drastic things that most communities don't do, you will get growth here. And so, assuming you're going to get growth, how do we have it add to the character of this place rather than being only a negative? We've been hearing from, not just last night, but throughout our interactions in the community that there's concern that the new subdivisions that are going in, one, are clear cutting all the trees. And so part of the character that people are associating with Fairview are the trees. And so you're losing those development by development. So if for no other reason than that, you might have a negative view of development because we're losing our trees. The other thing is we've been hearing that the developments are not really representative of Fairview. You know, I mean, there's not much here already. I mean, you've got, we were touring around yesterday and Ethan was like, and here's the historic community from 1960, you know, and so, you know, if you don't have much, that most people would think about as like, you know, say, well, what's the emblematic character of this community? They take you to the historic district, like 1860 or something, you know, like, you do have a few, you know, historic homes and buildings that we've seen around here that are really neat. But in general, you guys have kind of come up sort of post World War II, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, which while Fairview is a great place to be and live and all of that, isn't, you know, kind of those vintages of development and design and architecture weren't necessarily things that people often put on postcards, right? And so you see the same thing in places like Nolensville. You know, Spring Hill has a little bit of a historic area, but a lot of communities are like that. The place that I grew up, I think it was established in 1950 or something like that, and then it was all pretty much, there was no historic area. So you can't lean on that like a lot of places do, or even look to it for inspiration, right? Because a lot of times, well, if we need development, what are the places we love the most? And so, like in a place like Franklin, it's just easy. Right? Everybody loves downtown, like historic, not necessarily they love Main Street, but when I talk about a residential development, you think of Main Street, you're thinking about the neighborhoods around it, right? And so new neighborhoods that are going in, they're looking at that for inspiration. How can we take some of those things that we love the most and make new developments that represent that, and don't just feel like they could be anywhere in the country, and they feel uniquely Franklin, whatever. And so in our discussion about character in a place like this, it doesn't have those historic precedents to look at and be inspired by. Then you have to think about, well, what can we be? What do we want to be? A lot of times we sort of zoom out and look regionally, and so look at other places that are neat like that. So,
but don't you look at us as Williamson County as a whole, not just as Fairview?
Yeah.
So Williamson County is Franklin or Brentwood.
exactly.
Yeah, so our character needs to blend with that.
Yeah.
So we're not just Fairview, we're part of the community of the county.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to look like.
Perfect.
We want to be Franklin. Whatever you're putting in Franklin, we should have here. Whatever you're putting in Bridgeville. You know, the character is still should be flowing towards us.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that. So
Okay.
yeah. So the idea is like you have to look outside sometimes, and luckily, you know, because sometimes we work, and I will say, well, you just said what they're doing in Franklin, a lot of times though, we'll hear people say, well, we don't want to become Franklin, or we don't want to. But the thing we hear the most around here is we don't want to become Spring Hill in this region. You know, Yeah, I've not gotten Bellevue yet till today, so I'm gonna have to go to Bellevue apparently.
Yeah, you don't wanna go.
And I ask people when I hear that, like, well, what do you mean we don't want to be, we don't want to be Spring Hill? And then they say, well, the traffic, it's the same old, you don't know when you leave one place and enter another, and, you know, all that stuff. And so they, so, you know, how do we learn lessons from those places and do something different than what they did, as we move forward? But when you guys think about, character, kind of hearing that little narrative about the fact that you don't have the historic character very much. Do you imagine like new development should sort of look at and respond to and be similar to those neighborhoods from the 60s and 70s and 80s? Or
Well, I think you can go to some of the legacy neighborhoods in Fairview
Yeah.
and take character from that.
Yeah.
You know, Glen Haven, even if you want to go to, that's the one out on, Franklin. You know, Castleberry, you know, it's not that old, but it still has that feel to it.
yeah, Castleberry.
Castleberry or, you know, any of the legacy neighborhoods.
Yeah, and she was just saying Leaper's Fork is an open need. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's more secure.
Yeah,
I think that this community.
Leaper's Fork is neat. It's one, I mean, it's whenever people come to town to, you know, like our clients or their things that are planning, always take them to Leaper's Fork because it's actually a really rare kind of place, you know, sort of this hamlet that is thriving and, you know, sort of all dusty, rusty, falling apart, you know. But most people only experience it from the main sort of commercial corridor. And so what I always do is I take them up, you know, the side streets where the houses are too.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like those houses are, you know, neat historic homes, but they're not, it's not dense, it's not, you know, but they're not huge houses. And so they're, you know, I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned in a place like Leaper's
They have a
Fork.
rule there that you have to have 5-acre lots.
In the county, you do, but in Leaper's Fork proper, there are lots that are smaller than that. The historic lots for sure. I'm not positive as to whether or not if you did new development in Leaper's Fork, it would be 1 unit per 5 acres. And just to clarify too, in the county, while the zoning says 1 unit per 5 acres, you don't have to have 5-acre lots. You can actually cluster it so that you can have smaller lots, the same number. So let's say you have 100 acres, you know, and you do the math and you divide that by 5, you know, you can have that many units there, but you could make the lot smaller, group them together, have a little sort of feel like a community, and then preserve the rest. You know, it could be proper open space in that forest and, you know, all that. So part of what we're kind of scratching our heads about, thinking about for you all, is having zoning districts that you know, allow for or maybe require even sort of this conservation concept, of conservation subdivision or conservation neighborhood. That's what we call it. And if any of you who are here for the presentation last night, when I talked about agrihoods, the one I showed, the Armistead project in Franklin, the city didn't require it to be an agrihood. It required it to be a conservation neighborhood. And so we decided that we would take that land, that 50% of the land that we were required to conserve, and we would leave it in, or actually enhance it and make it productive agriculture at different scales. So it really leaned into the rural and agrarian heritage there. So you can do that. But some people in a community like this, especially when you kind of spark was lit in the 1960s, and you like look at those neighborhoods, the lots are about an acre or so, you know, and that's sort of the typical lot. In Brentwood, for instance, they for a long time they really prided themselves on being a 1-acre lot community, and then they finally realized, like, oh, we might like to have a little center and have some mixed use and stuff, and so they kind of relented on that a bit. But just so you know, a lot of rural communities that have 1-acre lots, the reason is, and I don't know if guys 1960s neighborhood did this, but a lot of them, they're 1 acre because that's the minimum lot size you can do a septic tank on. And so people move there and they think, oh, we're a 1-acre lot because this is the character one. No, it's actually to do with your waste, was how that worked out. But nonetheless, it kind of has a look and feel to it. I noticed though in the older neighborhoods that have 1 acre lots, or something that's called bigger lots, I bet, they had a lot of trees between the buildings, in front of the buildings, behind the buildings. Your new neighborhoods don't. So you still have that same lot pattern in a lot of the new neighborhoods. But now instead of seeing between houses, the trees and the woods, you see the back of other houses. And I was like, ooh, I would have merely rather the houses been closer together so I didn't have to see the back of that house. Because most houses, to be honest, the back isn't designed as well as the front, you know? And also too, from the livability perspective, if you're in the backyard and you know that everybody comes down the street, it's like, oh, hey, you know, oh, shoot, I was trying to have a little barbecue with the family, you know? So there's some things to think through that, and we'll share as we go some examples of things. So y'all, you know, maybe the first time y'all thought about community character, you know. So what are the places, your Leapers Fork and some of the other places in the county? Do you have other inspirational places that you like?
Well, Franklin River has codes, and if we could clear up some of their codes, if we could put codes and compare what they're doing right.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the direction we need to go.
Imitate from places that have done it wrong. Like, I think of like the nations in Nashville where there are no streets at all.
Right.
You go down a whole street, that's a single tree.
Yeah.
And I mean, that would completely take away from the character.
Mm-hmm.
That would have a, so much of our trees are really important. What limited waterways we have out here should be crucial to this mission. So I really would love to see those be protected, but how do you cling on to that without using it?
Yes, it's actually really easy to write ordinances that do it. We just have to be allowed to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's a matter of, what's that?
It's
Being
me, sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it's
I
me.
keep feeling like your computer about to shut down.
So you can write in those to protect like being kind of like pathways, like those-
Absolutely. And the other thing I've noticed is in some of your new subdivisions where they have, I don't know if they're required to, but they have protected or left alone the natural hydrology, whatever, but it's just sort of like left over. It's like the house is like lots back up to it, or even in one case I saw where they preserved it, it's called the block, went around, and they just deleted the lots where the waterway came through, which means then the back of the house is full out and display from the other side of the street, and it's like a very peculiar thing. Whereas if you really designed it properly, you would have actually worked with that, and it would have informed the network of streets. The thing that we do different too, and you'll see look at that Armistead plan again. We take those hydrological features, the streams, and even just wet weather conveyances that really look like a dry creek bed at most times, and we feature them. They become an amenity, and so the buildings face them instead of backing up to them, and that becomes part of the greenway and then all that stuff. Even if you protect green space like that or hydrology, and it's in the back, even if there's an access easement where people can technically go back there, people don't really feel comfortable doing it. If you know, like,
I don't
So,
know, that's not fair.
you know, yeah, maybe so. Yes, ma'am.
I moved to Tennessee. The first, one of the things we looked for is that there was a tree line behind us. It
Yeah.
didn't want to be an acre of trees,
Right.
but if anything got built, you still have that tree line with your eyes can, we lived in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
so, everything was, you can see anything. I mean, not as bad as New York. but,
Right.
But, that's one of the things we look for, in the house, our first house in Franklin, and now here in, Fairview, we have trees at the back of our lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything gets built behind it, hopefully those builders can't erase those trees.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was one neighborhood that we went in that I commented on how the trees kind of rose up behind, you came in the main road there, and there was a creek back there, and what was that?
Yep.
What's it called? Kyle's Creek.
Yeah, see, that's where I live.
Yeah, so
And that's, I was looking
really
for a
neat.
picture because it's like, and that, sorry, I just have a question. So,
like Castleberry subdivision, I know y'all went through that. And then my subdivision, Cows Creek. In the front, we're a neighborhood, but in the back, I've got a beautiful creek and big trees that are like 60 feet tall. So what is the difference in, and I'm not in favor of this. Why would somebody come in and just clear cut and then start building versus working around the natural, stream and trees? I don't,
It's cheaper, yeah,
it is.
yeah, it's just cheaper for the developer to do it that way. They just go in with the bulldozer hey, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Patrick Major. I'm with Cody.
Perfect.
We're friends. We're friends. I don't know if I should say all.
We did introductions earlier, that's what I was asking, not just because you commented.
Also a long time member of Fairview Topical there, spent almost summer down there. And I am currently a land planner by trade.
Oh, nice.
I spent 6 years working for Metro National Planning. I reviewed hundreds of subdivisions and reasons.
Yeah. Did you know Jessica?
Yes, I did. All right. So yeah, and I currently design subdivisions for private clients. We do not work here, just so you know. So that's not
Great.
Well, I don't understand why it's cheaper that seems like it's a lot of work to take out, just clear cut all the trees.
Yeah, so when you're laying out a neighborhood, a couple of things happen, right? So at the highest level, community design, you have to be thoughtful and look at where the trees are and how so like in that Armistead project, there's historic fence road, the tree rows that were between the farms that were, and then there's like groupings of trees, and then we have our stream and the riparian zone there, and if we a lot of times you'll see a plan and it's sort of like, how did they lay that out? And basically they start with the outside property lines and then they just offset the distance for the road and the lot. And it's like a math problem, and anybody could have laid it out. And that's just a kind of a ho-hum subdivision. Well, if you're doing that, which is often the way subdivisions are laid out, a tree in a particular spot goofs up your offset. And so we're just like, take that out. If you don't have a tree preservation requirement, unless it's a particular type of developer who sees the tree as an amenity and adds value to the development, which there's data that shows that now. But if you're a large scale home builder and it's volume, you got to crank it out.
Oh, and see, our homes are customs built by all different builders, so it's not but Castleberry, I don't know, was Castleberry like custom? Sorry, but when they built, was it one builder or was it a bunch of different? So, well, then, because if you notice in Castleberry, they kept all the, beautiful tree in the first, there's 300 homes.
Yeah, they built the first
And-
section, but see, the only trees were on fence lines.
Yeah.
The springs that were.
Oh, so what you're saying, since it was a pasture, it was kind of like naturally already
Right.
cleared.
Right.
Yeah.
Had cows.
Okay.
And sold them. So,
Yeah, so like our process, when we're working on a development project and doing the layout and design, literally we'll start with where are the trees not, and where the trees are, we stay away from that. And so like the city of Franklin has very strict tree preservation ordinance. But our Armistead project, what do we, Jessica, on Armistead, we're required to keep what percentage of the canopy? Anyway, a lot. It's and we exceeded it by a lot just because we felt like that adds value to the project and all of that stuff. It's harder to do it. So all you have to do is just require it. It's simple.
Did you see the article, the piece on Lexington, Kentucky, and they're being praised? They're putting billions of dollars putting in mature trees, and they're calling them biofilters. We're talking for air pollution, noise pollution, which is going to be an issue if you start clear cutting these trees in the houses. They're going to get the road noise from.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go forward and think responsibly, the trees are an asset. You don't have to spend $10,000 to bring in a mature tree.
Right.
They're there. So, yeah, I think that's what everybody's talking about. We want to preserve what's there and have those requirements.
Yeah, well, and then also when you, oh, I was gonna say, one more thing, yeah, you have a chair, you can come over here. Can you come on this side? Okay, thank you.
You know, there's a big spot by Tom. Why don't you pull up a chair?
So when we have pasture condition, like we just talked about, it's obviously easy to build there. But in addition to tree preservation ordinance, you also have, most places have requirements for adding additional trees. So you essentially forest a pasture. So street trees and yard trees and those kind of things. So you're adding more trees than were even there before by a good bit. So, yeah.
Well, and we do, and most of our, cuts, we are requiring tree lines, that's already, the planning commission over the years, not that it's perfectly, that we have seen a lot of that. So, but the biggest problem we have, and not sure how to fix, is it's not necessarily the developer, but it's individuals before they sell the property or clear cutting their property, and leaving their property, rights. So we can't stop people from clear cutting their own property. So I would be interested to know in the planning process and as we talk about this stuff, if you have any suggestions of, what we should do about it. Because that's some of the biggest complaints we have. You can't tell if they haven't brought a plan in front of the city, then we can't really stop people from.
They can clear cut and we can't tell them what they can do on their private property.
Are they foresters?
Well,
They're probably
let's be
selling
clear, you can't tell them yet. There's nothing stopping you from passing ordinances that
Right.
require you to retain tree
That
canopy, no
people
matter what the
can't,
zoning
people
is.
can't cut their own trees.
Right.
I mean, now you can use LiDAR data to see what was there.
It's one thing
There's
to
lots
cut a
of ways
tree.
to inventory current trees. Like the state has data from USGS. They have point clouds, they know exactly what's there for every part of the state, right? We already know what's there. So while I understand people have the right to manage property as they see fit, if you are clear cutting land, while it's your right, you are still going to inherently damage it. Like unless you have a management plan for grassland and something to come back where the trees were. And these regulations are already in Metro. They're already in their new subdivision regulations for their conservation and compact development. So they have
You're
all the
talking
data.
about a private property owner, you're gonna tell them what they can do on their property.
But you already do. You have a whole zoning ordinance and you have all kinds of regulations.
I don't know about that.
I mean, how big a tract are you talking about? Because it's one thing to clear cut an acre or half acre.
Right.
Clear cut 30 or 40, 50 acres, generally somebody's gonna clear cut that and sell it for money, but they're gonna flip it or whatever, they've already, there's plans. But, if I wanna make a 10-acre pasture, I cut 10 acres, they got full stump stuff, I wanna make a pasture. Stop.
Right.
Yeah, we
Nobody's
can't,
gonna tell me that I can't.
yeah,
do
we
that.
can't tell people that's government overseeing what a private property owner, private property owners have rights. And I get what you're saying because I can see, I think we all know if somebody's planning it to sell it
Oh,
rather than because of the amount of land that they're clearing.
Yeah, I see Mr. Beard's point.
Yeah, I see his point too.
What about rural
I
character?
think, like over here talking about, there's a lot of trees behind our house. Well, whose property is it on? Is it on ours or on somebody else's? If somebody else buys that property and the trees are on theirs, then they have a right to either trim them out or clear them out, because a tree it only has a sustainability for so long. There's a marketability for a mature tree. And if you don't take them out, then they had it. So, you got to manage your trees and your forests and stuff like you do over, Philly, and you just can't let them just grow without any type of management behind it. But, I don't know of anybody who clear cutting a large section of land except out here off 100, going down Whipwell Hill. Now that was, you know, I don't know where they took it, because a lot of them, you know, the places right here won't take that type of camp. But, I mean, it was, I did like to see it, but.
And David, is that in Davidson County or?
That's
That's
going
right, that's the
down,
top corner of that.
that's in the city of Fairview, going down Whipple Hill.
It's on the ridge.
The 300 acres on the right that,
Part of it's Davidson.
so part of it's Davidson and part of it's
You get
Williamson?
that bottom hill, I think it's not far. from
Yeah.
Dave's, but what they clear cut.
The
most of it
top.
in Williams.
But isn't he kind of in trouble?
And I didn't bring it up, just to start, I just want to bring up, as we're talking about this, that's something that we do hear about a lot. So if there is things that we need to look at, then we need to have that same conversation. Because a lot of citizens will see things, trees coming down, and they want to come and ask about, you know, the day of their hazard plan. That's probably not that. But there is, hasn't been a plan for all of the city. So it's real hard to say you can't clear cut your own property. Now, they may turn around and sell it, try to sell it in 6 months, and then you know what they did. But they may do it and not sell it for, you know, a couple of years, then, or, you know, so what are we gonna do? Like, how do you?
Yeah.
And that's what I heard about that tract, was guys gonna sell off large acres, or large tracts for equipment.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, to cut a tree down for pasture. So, you know, that was a income he got from clear cutting. It did look good, but I mean, business sense, it made sense for that person, putting on the place.
And is it zone agriculture?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be something as simple as, well, you don't want somebody to be able to say, well, this is my private property and so I'm gonna do what I want and I'm gonna sell it, you know, the same way like a developer, it's their private property too, and you know, you have standards for what they can do. And so if somebody's trying to sort of get around the zoning, you know, maybe a simple matter of when they come to ask to have it rezoned, they say, no.
Right,
You
I will say, in our current zoning ordinance and stormwater ordinance, there are some provisions for clear cutting as far as if a landowner wants to clear more than 33% of trees over 8 inches in diameter at breast height, they have to come in and seek a permit from our office. To get that, they have to demonstrate and show the process, how they will mitigate any failures to soil or erosion.
We have
all the erosion.
in our
all the
stormwater.
sediment control.
Penalty for going not doing that, like city wise, that is, you get to that. State or more than a little bit.
So we do look for most properties out here. There's almost always a stream, wet weather conveyance, some wetland, something along, just with the topography. So we look for permits from the state for those issues that may arise. And then for our code, if our permit is not massive, once we're notified of something, we go out and notify the landowner. And there's up to $50 a day. Stay except for the fence. Penalty for not having a permit. But if anything is less than 8 inches in diameter, they're able, that is considered for our code rubbing. They're able to rub their site and anything that's less than 8 inches without a permit for our code. So things like that where you look through, there's a lot of forested land, but how many of those trees out there are over 8 inches in diameter and how many are under? 6-inch diameter tree. I mean, that's a good sized tree that can come down without anyone from city staff.
So we can change those codes to make them smaller trees.
You can make them more restrictive than
Smaller
that.
trees.
I would say too, I want to make a comment. You have a super dense population of trees. You need to clear some of the smaller trees so that the larger trees can survive.
Mhm.
And so you can't go too far in restricting what's.
Well, I think you still would get the permit if it's more restrictive, it's just, like what you need to meet that threshold, I guess. But I feel like that would be something that even if it's small in diameter, 8, if we move it down. Still just going through that same process.
Still do it, but you're being heavily oversight.
It's like
over
sanctioned
the erosion
by-
protection instead of.
Yeah.
From our engineering staff.
Is there a plan to, I mean, I know this is all city. So is there a plan to connect all of these properties at one point? Or are we finished with
Currently,
it?
currently they are all connected by the roadway that exists in front of them. The city maintains the roads. There's within the city limits. So they are technically connected.
Okay.
But, as those properties come up for sale, they're viewed that, you know, have been in people's families for hundreds of years. As those come up for sale, we will not annex them until the owner asks for a property to get annexed. That is, the procedure behind that. And so there will likely be at some point, maybe not in some of our lifetimes, probably not in my lifetime, that everything's all connected and there's not any holes throughout the middle of the city. But at some point in the future, there will not be any more holes. Development will come in and purchase, build, and annex into the city to get city services. And that will eventually happen.
So we could be thinking about those areas too, probably throughout this process.
Yeah, I mean, you
Could
look
be
at,
part of our city.
you look at on the map, anything that's lightly shaded and not have the satellite image. Everything on the map except for this top little piece right here in our urban growth boundary and can legally be annexed into the city. But particularly some of these donut holes throughout the middle and directly adjacent to some of these other projects you look at, those are more likely to come in because they're very closely tied to city services currently and the extension to city services to those properties. It's
But
the
only
same
by,
three pieces.
only by owner's request. We
By
can't,
request.
we cannot annex, that's illegal. We cannot annex
Yeah.
anyone without the owner wanting to be annexed. So if that owner never wants to be annexed, they just
Sit down.
stay like that.
Is it correct to say then, back to the clearing thing, that an individual, let's say, farmer has land they want to farm it, they have to come get a permit if they're gonna clear more than 33%, but, so they can't clear cut unless they get a permit. But a developer can come in and clear cut their development.
It's the same permit that they would have. that they're required to.
So y'all are giving them permission to clear cut.
Grading and site utilization permit.
Yeah.
Okay. The same standard exists for the developer at that point, it's the landowner, so it's the same standard that exists.
I see, okay.
So can we not want that?
That's what I'm hearing people saying, you know, from the community, that that's desirable.
I'm lucky, I don't live in the city. It's good and bad, but, I think, but I've heard complaints about down the road from, about a developer buying, or it's like you just bulldoze and everything down. And then the existing subdivision, they had to run off, and they started burning the timber, they had to clear out all the smoke. And I kept thinking, why is that? You know, if they don't have a code, maybe they better. You know, but I mean, it caused cities some issues because they had to spend time and personnel to go out there and oversee it. Make sure they're gonna do everything legal. I'm sure expensive. Environment, with the tree and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it, you know, I'm caught between rock and hard place because, you know, I can understand if you bought a piece of property, you want to do what you want to use it for. But I hate seeing tearing down trees that are not ready to go yet. If it's market, if they're ready to go to market, they take it. Because this could be somebody else that ain't take that really quick. But just a big pile of brush and then start burning it, wherever the wind blows, that's where the smoke. And then folks in the Casper, you know, they got their dose of it. Of course, then the blasting occurred. And I don't never remember anybody blasting, I don't think, over my lifetime, but this past time, so that's something. And then, you know, there's another, the same building on the place behind me. And luckily, he only cleared out majority on my end, so he left. So I'm lucky there. You know, I feel for you folks who live in subdivision, live next to a larger tract, and that sells, that there comes in, clear cuts it, and then you're left with what happens with that, whether it be the smoke from the burning, because you don't want to bury it, because it's going to cause sinkholes later.
Right.
So, I mean, that's something that folks who are in the government part of it don't have to look at, because eventually, when it gets all done, it's going to be better. But it's that period of time from this area, it's going to cause issue for people to 20.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about. Is there like y'all are having growing pains? You know, y'all are at this sort of fork in the road, you know, and, you know, your rules and regulations are set up for more of a rural community, and you can just do whatever, burn you this and that, whatever. But now you're growing into a proper, like I always like pause when I say city, you know, like some places are towns or, you know, y'all are a city. And so it's like y'all are really turning into a city, and you need your ordinances, regulations to kind of like be more sophisticated to deal with those things.
And another point that going off of what David was saying is what we do need to realize, how long ago did Tackleberry start? Last year, early 90s. That is phase 3. Even when it's phase 3 of plan, 30 years is how long it took to get the thing. So it was horrible that these people came involved in section 1 and 2, but all along section 3 was there, and now they're getting, you know, granted, some of that stuff is clear cut and all that. We understand their pain of how it's in. The subdivision took 30 years to get to phase 3. So that's something that is hard to make the community realize is 30 years later. And Castleberry has always been one of the most desirable subdivisions to move into. So, and still people want to move into it. So anyway, it's just something when you're doing planning to realize that it takes that long sometimes for you know, the vision.
Yeah. Were
I sat here with Susan at the groundbreaking 30 years ago. We were planning for the city center.
Yeah,
And
we've got a lot of communities.
To have, you know, 30, 40 years ago, somebody planned city center. So, like y'all are doing right now.
Right.
How many times has the laws changed since 30 years ago when Castleberry?
Right. I was just gonna say, I mean, were people aware, like the first phase, 1 and 2, were they aware that phase 3 was gonna
They
happen?
were aware, but they didn't know, was not aware of all the different kind of changes.
What it was gonna be? It's because it was different than their part of the neighborhood, is that the idea?
Actually, I mean, the subdivision, I mean, correct me, you can, I think you've done the homework, but the subdivision really hasn't changed that much. I mean, that some of the codes might have changed, but that if it's a new section, they have to come up to today's codes.
Mhm.
So, but they were aware when you buy, you know, you're aware of, you know, it's your realtor's responsibility, the
Yeah.
developer's, and the homeowner's responsibility to know what they're buying into to a certain extent.
Right.
30 years ago, the realtors didn't have to explain everything. They do now.
Mhm.
So a lot of those problems.
Well, and I'm guessing the pace of growth that we have around here, y'all probably won't have 30-year subdivisions anymore. But nonetheless, you know,
When developed correctly.
yeah, exactly.
But what Fairview's gonna have is traffic. That's what everybody's gonna have problems with, traffic, but there's no way what to go.
Yeah.
Not only you get people here, but you got Dixon City and some beyond. 100 is not gonna be a manual route for them to go.
Yeah.
But there is no way to go.
Well, there's not yet, but there can be, you know.
Yeah, because if there's an accident on the 40, they're all coming down.
Yeah.
An accident.
Yeah.
But we run into the same thing about transportation. Everybody, we know who's gonna predict it. The flood in Tennessee. But if you live in Memphis, you live in Knoxville, you live in Nashville, all those regions around there are the growth has come. We can't really stop it. So, it's making sure that we are going after the dollars to do the road improvement. And we are putting in a strong infrastructure into place. It's gonna make the difference, but, y'all, it's a Tennessee problem. It's just not Fairview, it's Nashville. But anybody that, if your county touches a metropolitan area, you've seen a huge increase over the last 5 years.
And Fairview, see, like the back end of that too, right? It's grown up just about everywhere else around Nashville, except for we're kind of one of those last communities that are within 30 minutes of getting into the city.
But that makes us more valuable. We have a commodity. We start looking at homes. People aren't coming out there looking at property.
Oh, yeah.
They're looking at Stevens Valley for $2 million. Well, I'm zoned to the same school, I'm coming here to buy $1.5 million house. This property. So this is not small town stuff anymore. It's gonna be a whole different mindset of what they want. They want that building, green space, but and responsible development. They don't want building. You've got unit on top of unit on top of unit, and you end up with the crime that comes with it. You know, so they don't raise about the winds. It's supposed to be more responsible count.
I think with the folks you got in government city Fairview, you got an idea about what things are going to look like based on. But you have the major commodity that's outside our control, and that's water and sewer. I know the water and sewer on like the road is limited. What's that say for the rest of the city? Because if you can't get water and sewer for your development, what's that left? You either have no development or you go back to the old well and settle. I don't think you want to see development with that. So I don't know where Dixon Water Board sits on that, but I know speaking with them, you know, the septic line is not very big on Frankfurt Road. So that limits anything there. Now, I'm pretty sure when they put it in back years ago, they probably did the same for everything else. So they're either gonna have to do major infrastructure investment from their end, because they own it now. The city sold it to them. That's another story. But they sold those rights in that part of it. So that's one thing I've got is just where do we have to go for the water and sewer survivability for this city, maintain what we have.
Well,
I'm in communication with Michael Rogers weekly, and I go to all the water board meetings monthly. And I can tell you right now, they're increasing, they just spent $9 million in Fairview, increasing our sewer capacity. And the Jones Creek plan is being increased right now. Unfortunately, Lick Creek didn't get passed, but we're suing them right now. We're suing them for an appeal right now to get that passed. And if people really understood how the effluent is not contaminating to the creek, we've got people out in Hickman County who have property out there that they like to, they're wealthy people who have the property out there. They don't want something, they don't want the effluent going into Lick Creek because they don't understand the process. Well, let me tell you the process. It's treated, and then it's ultraviolet, then it's treated again. I would take a cup under that water and drink it myself. It's cleaner than what goes in the creek. And if they understood that, they always complain about the Duck River being too low because that's where they play. They have boats, they have kayaks, they do all that, but it's always low. Well, if they understood the way the affluent would actually, it's cleaner than the water going into the creek, it would increase the flow of the creek to the duck, then it would just be a recycle process and we would not have a water and sewer problem.
Ultimately, it's, you know, the new development are customers for those utilities, right? And so it behooves them to increase the facilities to meet
Well,
the.
the one time they allowed farmers to go down and get the powder process, I guess, what you want to call it, and put it on the back, the fertilizer. Well, they stopped it and started taking it to the landfill. So they kind of eliminated that resource for you. But like I said, you know, as far as the water and all that stuff goes, I know that the treatment facility, say they.
Jones Creek is just, they just spent $9 million increasing that, which gives us, you know, an extra 20,000 gallons a
That's
day
it.
right now.
Is that in Dixon County, the Jones Creek?
It is, but it services Fairview.
That's what we're going to.
Yes, so,
Is there a talk to ever put a facility out here? I know there was
not at this point, but if anything develops that's substantial, which I'm not in favor of residential out at 840. We've got hospitals looking at that area. We've got major manufacturing looking at that area. That area is where it's really limited as far as water and sewer. Those companies don't care. They're going to put the money into it to mitigate that. So that's
potentially benefit from.
yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. So I'm there every month, making sure that I can answer the questions that our community has. So.
I have a question about that. When we went out here, in the summer, we were used to watering, but increased watering, and they would offset in the summer for people who were watering their yards and not have the sewer. When we got our first bill in Dixon County, they don't do that.
Well, have you reached out to them?
I called them
Okay.
and I said, we don't do that. So our water bill was one thing, then they more than doubled it for our sewer, which nothing was going down the sewer. None of that was going down the sewer. So I don't know if they can become more resident friendly and realize that we're trying to plant trees and watering in summer, you know.
I mean, I talk, when we're at the meetings, I'm not a member of the board, but they've embraced me as part of their group. So I can always take questions from the community back to Dixon Water.
Because you want to be able to plant trees and make your yard beautiful, but my goodness, when you're doubling what you put in water, more than that. And turning that sewer, it went from a $200 bill to a $500.
That's a good question because you know, it doesn't make sense to have to pay for, it seems like there should be some way, like when somebody's filling a pool.
Right.
You know, why, it doesn't make sense to pay for the sewer part of it because you're filling the pool and it's not being treated. So I definitely will, ask them that question.
One time people bought two water tanks, one tied to the sewer, and one just the water.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yeah, very expensive. We looked into that. Dixon does not like to do it.
And I don't even know if we'll do it
Dixon
anymore.
will let you do
We
it.
looked into it a few years ago, and it was just expensive.
Let me ask you all this. We talked about character a lot. It's also about housing. You know, seeing the growth that's projected to come to the county, knowing that the predominance of housing right now is detached single family on large lots. And you know, that just works really well for a certain part of the population, you know, certain stage of life. But we've also seen in a lot of communities that have that sort of development pattern that people who have actually fought for that development pattern, those larger lots and larger houses, all of a sudden when they get older, go, oh shoot, what am I going to do now? I don't want a big house, a big lot, all that. Now I've got to leave town, or I've got to go to the senior center in the strip mall or whatever, you know. And so a lot of communities we've been talking to, and I've had one of the slides where I talked about multi-generational living. And one of the ways that you can accomplish that is by having a variety of housing types. Seems like the non-single family residential that you're getting now is in the form of more conventional, like townhome complexes or maybe apartment complexes, something along those lines, which,
You can't do stairs, you can't do stairs.
Yeah, well, that's it, yeah,
Yes.
they need, I like the idea, if I grow older, is a patio home. 1 story with a little yard that you can, do your gardening in.
Yep.
And they don't have any of that here, I think they have it in West Haven.
Yep.
But,
Like a cottage.
yeah, oh,
Oh,
yeah.
it's the smallest lot you can do in
One
town right now.
story, because I mean, that's the thing that,
What size lot are you thinking about for that?
I don't know, and I tell people,
So a half acre's pretty big. So you're gonna put a cottage on a half acre?
If it's zone senior living, can you do senior living community, like where you have the nature park and accessibility of that?
yes.
Like there is the development behind the church there, so that my mother used to live there, that was the reason why she moved there ultimately. Because she had just a tiny little spot to worry about, and it's all one level, that's all she needs. Zone senior living. Right.
Have you ever zoned something like that? Like a zone, like they're speaking of zone senior living, where it's more trees and level and one floor, like an older one floor sound.
Yeah.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Typically, you wouldn't have a city zoning district that is age restricted. You would have a form, a character that lends itself to that, right? A developer could then put covenants or deed restrictions on if they wanted to limit it to senior housing. But what we're seeing is that the predominance of senior-only housing has really gone down because people, when they kind of get put all together in the same age cohort, they kind of miss out on the vitality of youth and kids and whatever. Even if they initially thought, oh yeah, this will be quiet, I don't want to hear any crying kids, I don't even like my own grandkids, whatever,
I know the people I
and-
know that love it.
Yeah.
There's that Dell community in Spring Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, going down the street is like, look, everything looks pretty, cookie cutter, but there are different models. And they can do so much from their side in backyards that are small.
Yeah.
And I have people in my age group in their 70s, they're happy there.
Yeah.
They like that. And then they have people of their same age to do things with.
Yeah, no, I for sure, if that is the only option, and it makes sense, because then it's kind of like your summer camp for seniors, everybody's there together and you're having fun and doing all that. But what you see in a place like West Haven as an example, the two demographic groups that probably most gravitate towards West Haven are seniors and families with young kids. And so they have like clubs and groups for seniors as if it were a senior community. And the reason is that at that stage of life, when you've got little kids and things, it's, kind of nice. You're just getting going. You may not be able to afford a really big house, and the kids aren't big enough to need a really big house, all that. And you got parks and things and sidewalks, and you can walk around. So you got your stroller out there in the same way somebody who's older may want to get out and walk around for exercise or just to see people. And then you've got the porches and see some of the porch and you see, and then the younger people can talk to the older people and get the wisdom of ages and all that stuff.
And you could have, the grandparents maybe in the smaller homes, and then their grandchildren are in one of the bigger homes, but you're both in walking distance from each other.
So as an example, so when we moved to Franklin, and we moved into West Haven, it wasn't very many years after that my dad was working with, my parents moved from Birmingham and they live a few blocks away from us. And so it's been great, they get to see the grandkids all the time and the grandkids walk up there.
That's kind of what we're talking about
yeah.
with green space, how West Haven has the pond, they have the green space, they have accessibility. And I think they're even doing like the needs, right? Where people will own a smaller place, lock it up for the winter and then garden in there.
There are a lot of snowbirds, and also having the sort of mother-in-law flat or whatever above the garage a lot of times. So, and what we see is, while it had sometimes they call that, often we're seeing the kids who've gotten out of college and are still trying to figure out or get a job or whatever, they're living in that, you know, and their parents, and then they, it's a great way for, somebody can rent out that space, to a school teacher or whomever, somebody starting off in their career. And it's what you might call gentle density, where you don't really notice it. It just seems like there's a garage with a carriage house above it or whatever.
So it's more of a story in a half, not town, not tall and skinnies. Tall and skinnies, we got something.
Yes, yeah, well, and there are townhomes oftentimes, but to your point, often doesn't work great if you can't do stairs. Some of them are like in West End are so expensive, they have elevators. But,
You already Carol it.
yes, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, but having that mix of housing types, I think is really helpful for a community to really be complete and be able to accommodate you at all stages in your life. But as we talked about last night, so often when we talk about something that is an apartment or townhouse or whatever, you would immediately think of a suburban apartment complex or townhouse company, like townhouses where they call townhouses, but there's really no town with them because they're just like all big set up and just parking lots around them. And so there are ways that we can, for one, make all these different housing types available for developers to use, but you can even go one step further and you can have requirements for percentages of various types. So you have a mixed neighborhood. So it's not all one thing. And if you think about some of your favorite places that you may have visited, historic neighborhoods, they were mixed like that. It was very rare.
I think people last night were talking, they do not want these front loading garages.
Yeah, we heard a lot about
There's a
that.
lot of that.
Yeah,
But you need a bigger lot for a side or back garage.
only slightly bigger though, because you just need to be able to run the driveway down the side.
Do you ever park cars like that?
Yeah, we have them all in West Haven. There's tons of.
We have to do multiple move outs every morning.
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean, you drive past the house and then the garage is in the back and there's a little area.
Oh, you're
there.
talking about like one person living there.
An alley in the back of West.
No, like there's a garage
Yeah.
in the back, you pull around.
Yeah, I'll show you all examples.
Courtyard
We've
in the
got,
back.
so there's, well,
Plantation has a lot of those.
there's alleys sometimes in West Haven or historic places. And then there's also, like in downtown Franklin, the historic homes that are there, they all have garages. They're just set back and you drive past the house and then there's a little court, and you pull in your garage and then some people could park in the driveway if they wanted to, but yeah, it's definitely something, it's the easiest thing to do to not have front loaded garages. But what you'll often see is there's a big pushback from the development community because that's what their plans are set up for. It may not even be cheaper necessarily, but that's what they've designed their plans to have it that way. Of course.
That's only when it benefits is the developer, because they get to go smaller lots, and it's less cost.
Yeah.
If we make them where they have to have a bigger lot and a garage, then we get a little better development.
And I guess if three of your kids are driving, this is just, okay. If three of your kids are driving and you have a side loaded garage, because this is what I deal with, and you drive and your husband drives, then you've got 5 cars and you have one driveway going back to that side loading garage, then you have to play multiple to get all the
Musical
cars,
chairs.
yes, to get all the cars out. And so if you have a front loading garage, you park, 2 people park in the garage and 2 people park out, then they can pull out individually instead of that one drive. Does that
But
make
you still have
sense?
to move the car in the driveway to get
Right.
one out of the garage.
There's 2 that can move though. There's 2 that can move, not a stack of,
Right. Well, it's the
a
same
stack
thing,
of
though.
cars.
But
What I'm saying
also,
is
if
you
you
would-
only
Well,
have-
not really,
If
because
you
you can
only
only
have
move one
20
car
or
at a time.
25 feet in front of that garage, you can only park there, and using your example, then you have 3 cars on the street.
I will say.
Yeah, we can't park our cars on
So
our
look at
street.
this. This is
Well, that's what I'm saying.
downtown Franklin, historic home. So here's the street, here's the driveway, here's the garage. This is just the same, this parking area here, as if we're stuck up on the street.
So how many homes is that?
It's one home. It's a house.
So like $1 million home?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
It's in
Well,
front.
but we're there in Fairview,
You know,
right?
home's not that big anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean.
I'll never be able to afford things.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. My kids aren't gonna be able to afford a
All right,
$1 million
I
home.
can
From
show
that-
you homes that aren't $1 million. This happens, just for ease of.
Oh,
There's
that
not
can
many
happen
homes
at
here
any
that aren't,
point. Yeah, that
aren't
can
close
happen.
to seven,
Yeah.
800,000.
What we're experiencing here in Fairview is not unique, obviously, but as somebody who grew up here, who's newly married, who's a young professional living and working in Nashville, I couldn't afford to move out here if I could. And I would love to. I would love to be back in my hometown. But there's no way I can afford a $600,000-$750,000. Whether that's a new build or it's someone's.
There's also no in between.
No, there's no in between all.
There's no.
We-
Yeah, I can live
Yeah,
in
we-
Roundtree or. I can
But
make
you
too
make
money.
too much money to live around.
And so, what, to your
Yeah.
point is, I think what could really benefit the city is that mixed use of development, right? Maybe it's not the tall and skinny townhome that we see in the nation, but it's something along
Those
those.
coming in here, tall and skinny's gonna be right there.
And those are, those could be a good thing, because ultimately that means lower home prices, more housing in this community could mean lower home prices for someone like Cody and I to move back to Arlington. But also, to y'all's point about having somewhere for senior citizens to live.
Yeah, I
That
think that's a good
development can
point.
also have that, right? It can have that cottage style.
A lot of times your senior is some form of fixed income, similar
Yes.
to a young professional.
Yeah.
On the same. As far as economic. You're looking for that same kind of market. That you're both competing for. It's something relatively small. Right now, our rental market here is almost obsolete.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
We-
Yeah, there's no.
No, no retail rental at all.
The apartment complexes that are here are income.
Yep.
Most people.
But we got this coming in, right? And then you're gonna have city hall, this
Well,
coming
and
in, it's
that's,
all rental.
could be a good
Ones
thing,
that are-
right?
But
Because.
that's already.
Well, they're
ones that
not
are up
rentals.
here are
City
not
center's not rentals.
They're not
City.
rentals?
No.
None
But
of
that could
Some
be
will
a-
be
Not even
sold,
city center?
some will be.
City centers can be townhomes and single-family homes in the back.
So
There
they're
might be a,
purchased,
yes.
purchased and not rental.
There's a lot of the townhomes that are approved currently that will be purchased, but they're, I would say probably 60-40, 40% of the townhome units are approved currently. From, the city has no control of if they rent them themselves or any of those things, but from what they have acknowledged in conversations with the city staff and at their meetings, about 40% of those are looking for rentals throughout the community, which.
But they're not gonna be here
Frankly,
tomorrow
we're looking
either.
at a rental
We're
price-
talking 3 to 5 years from now.
You're looking at a rental price of around $2,000 a month. which
Yeah.
That's more than my mortgage. That's probably more than most.
I think that's a nationwide issue, also it's having the same issue. It's the economy.
We can mitigate that though here in Fairview. And that's the cool thing about going through this process, is we can talk about how we might do that if it's urban core. But then when you get to places like Old Franklin or out toward Camp Mary, it's larger rural preserving that character tracks.
But even with the way
We have
that our
another
zoning
appointment, y'all.
ordinance.
No worries.
This is not, it's not on the city of Fairview, right? I thought it was gonna be. on
This one is not, but our night ones being, we have another one tonight.
Yeah.
And then, right,
Yeah.
Will be on.
tonight and Thursday night, right?
We have tonight, but.
What is, this is Tuesday.
Outside of competition.
There's a-
Our current zoning ordinance, and this is one of the things that Brian has talked to at both of our other meetings. We focus on the primary, that's the number one issue. Eight Woods behind Kessler, that's zoned R, minimum 20,000 square foot. Single family and duplex houses, that's what you can do. They're doing single family homes process. But if you have a character district that allows you to do single family homes and kind of a mixed use, you get to pull in the young professionals, the senior living, the general 30 to 50-year-old young family to mature family. You get to pull all of that together to have a full community and see all the aspects you spoke to,
some of the wisdom even getting passed down through from the senior community to the young family. You know, we have our next door neighbor, they're old enough to be my grandparents, but they treat my children like they're their own grandkids. They bring gifts and treats and jams and jellies, and my kids think they're awesome.
And probably impart wisdom onto you as a young married couple
Yeah.
with what they've learned as, you know, in their years of.
Yes, they, you know, having kind of a mix within your development, having the opportunity for someone who's at a different economic point in life to be able to live all within the same development is not even a considered thought with how our current development is written, where it can be with how we move forward and move everything.
And it also makes the developments more resilient from the developer's perspective, if they're really thinking about it. Because if you have, let's say you have 100 lots and they're all exactly the same, you're counting on 100 people all having the exact same preference and coming and buying those lots. Whereas if you had 20 that were this and 20 that were that, 20 that, you don't have to find 20 people. And so if the economy gets a little bit, you know, whatever, you can find 20, maybe you can't find 100. And so your development doesn't take 30 years or whatever because the economy slows down. But yeah, there's so many benefits to doing it that way. And one of the benefits is also character. And so you'll get to the point, like right now in cities that have neighborhoods like West Haven, when people come to visit somebody in that city, they take them to the neighborhood, not you know, they see down that bring them, of course, and they're like, oh, you got to see this other neighborhood too, because it's so unusual and different than what people are used to, that it now becomes its own feature and it adds to the image of the city. That doesn't happen for regular old subdivisions. You don't take people very often to see that. But we can do it. It's just a matter of, you know, if you all are interested and willing to kind of say this is how it's going to be. And
restrictions need to be correct. Side loading garages. I think these are all issues that we brought up last night.
right, right. And we're working on some lot type diagrams to start to explain some of these things so we can visualize it. But you mentioned brick just now. In Nolensville, they had a requirement that 75% of buildings had to be brick, like of the building, not 75% of the building, it's like the building. So, which is sometimes odd, you know, normally, like if it's a brick building, it's a brick building, you know. But they had that regulation. I asked them, well, where'd that come from? Why'd you put that in place? And they're like, well, brick is more expensive than siding. And so we figured we'd have better development. And I said, well, in your comp plan, it says that you want small town charm. And your zoning ordinance that says small town charm, your design standards. If you look around many small towns, brick is actually the material used sparingly, maybe on all the foundations or whatever, but very few houses except for like the banker's house on the hill or the mayor's house or whoever, you know.
I've lived here a long time.
Hey,
I do, okay, I do have brick house, but you know, there's this board and batten hardy board, the farmhouse style that is really popular right now.
Yeah.
And the third phase of my subdivision, you know, half of them are going that way. And I'm just like, wow, that is beautiful. So, yeah, so I think a mixture, you know, but I'm not about aluminum and vinyl siding, none of that anymore. I like the hardy board and batten, the one that looks like the farmhouse style, a mixture of that with, and my house is brick, but you know, when I bought it 15 years ago, and that's kind of in our subdivision, that's kind of what they did. They just, all the houses were brick, so.
But it starts to kind of, you can lean into that rural kind of aesthetic and the character, and it's less expensive. The house is less expensive, and so, you know, you're doing this thing that actually is adding more character, but you're not adding more costs. So from the builder or developer's perspective, then it could be a win-win.
But brick is less upkeep
for sure.
For elderly people, that's what they want.
Yeah.
I don't know why some people coming in there spraying painting of bricks.
Well, you, and
It's just-
you wouldn't,
they got 20 years.
you
They
wouldn't
got-
prohibit brick though. So if somebody
They're gonna be
wanted a brick
redoing it
home,
again.
then they could have it, right? Whereas, something like the Nolansville Center required 75% of a building to be brick. And so if somebody wants to do brick, they, they mix it in, and some people don't. And, when you've got, materials like cementitious siding, like hardy board and those kind of things, they're pretty sturdy, you do have to paint them every so often. But, those are the kind of standards that we can easily incorporate. However, there are state statutes now, because the home builders have lobbied super hard to make sure that no one can keep them from doing the same thing they did in every other town. So coming to a town near you, the same thing I did in the other town. And so there's been court cases about it, and so we're new court cases even. And so we're trying to make sure that we've got all that stuff dialed in. Think that you can still have regulations. Some people tell you can't regulate the design of single family homes. And you also, there's regulations, state statutes that say you can't discriminate against any particular material. So like you couldn't say you can't do vinyl siding, for instance. However, there are other ways that you can have the same effect, the same end result of doing that. So, and somebody came up to me last night and at the end and said, the one thing we didn't really talk about is the design of buildings, of like making them look like, what is the Fairview look, or what is rural, or whatever. I said, well, thanks for bringing it up, because it is something that usually comes up at some point. Some communities are really, really happy to be very, very stringent and rigorous about design standards for buildings, and other communities are less so. Obviously, the results you get would vary quite wildly if you're rigorous about design standards and have a intended, kind of character and architectural character in this case, not just layout, whatever. It'd be different than if you had none, and the builder, developer just do anything they wanted to. And so next thing you know, you've got, the neighborhood called Gilbert, and it's all like, some Arizona style buildings or whatever, and it's like, whoa, that is not Fairview, so we'll be thinking through that as well, unless y'all just want a free for all designers.
I have a question about the property between Cumberland and Jefferson's, I think we call it.
Sullivan property, Barks East.
Is that, I heard somewhere that it was gonna be like, Fairview Farms in Franklin, off of, 95, no, whatever.
Off of 65?
Goose Creek.
Yeah. Is it the same as?
Industrial park.
Well, the front, the way it's set up right now, because it's a transitional corridor in that area. So it's retail up front, and then it's townhomes in the middle and single family homes in the back, which is a nice mix where you have, with the sidewalks, walkability. They're looking at doing turn lanes all the way down, so be ease of getting in and out.
What's it called?
But Barks East.
It's finished the labor since the guys, communities come out so hard. There's not a brick on anything, and then the roadways
not.
are real too narrow.
There's no brick.
It's actually coming in
No
within
brick?
20 feet of some of the existing.
I don't remember no brick.
So they made it.
Bark is in like a dog.
I personally
Bark
think there should
East.
be a building
Bark
moratorium.
like a dog.
Yeah.
Bark East.
So we're gonna stop building, but we're gonna let everybody else around us build, and they're the ones who are gonna be, putting traffic on our
Well,
street.
we had a building moratorium when Dixon didn't have enough water for us,
Sewer.
sewer, okay, whatever it was. Until we get the main roads fixed.
That's
We
about
don't
15
need-
years from now. That's
Right.
not really,
So,
yeah.
but look at all the houses that have already been, or the developments that have already been approved. That's gonna take a while for them to be built. Why can't we just stop building a new,
Well, if the people would stop selling their farms, then nobody would buy it to build.
Change the
Yeah,
code
and
to
they do
require.
have-
But if somebody, that's right, because somebody offers them $4 million,
Change the
then
code to require developers to put up money to maintain, and fix the roads based on the impact that they create.
Well, that's what we do.
Do we have an impact to this?
Yes, that's what we do.
Well, when we did the garage, car wash, but why did we not have them have a lead-in just to a car wash? Like, there's no field area to get into it, if you come from the west side, it's like you're afraid you're gonna run over the curb. Those type of things always need to be addressed in every single subdivision, start or building or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably those types of things fall into the growing pains category, because in the past, when you didn't have much development and there wasn't much traffic and there wasn't much on the highways and stuff, you didn't have to be quite as precise as when you were evaluating a development. And now you're kind of to the point where you gotta, yeah. One of the things.
Have to ask for what's going on.
I think that's what I'm hearing from the community, but one of the things that I would also recommend too, when we talk about mixing things, that the idea of like, if you can easily draw what you might think is a bubble diagram of a development, it's not mixed appropriately, right? So when you think about a historic place or a place, where you have all these different types of things, they were literally mixed in together. Like you would have a single family house, a couple of them, and then there might be 6 row houses, and then there might be a small 6-plex apartment, and then more single family, and it's all mixed in, but architecturally and scale wise and all that, they all work together. And so it wasn't odd for them to be mixed. And so what I'm seeing in some of the developments around where you do have more than one housing type, to see on a developer, it's called a product. If you have more than one product in it, it's like, here's the townhouse section, and here's the commercial section, here's the single family section, and that will always feel like a development. It will always come off in that way. And then furthermore, when you have across the street from each other, 2 different things like that, it's a peculiar chasm that happens in that street. And so I'm glad to see that y'all are getting a mix of things already in some of these developments, but having them be less potted in that way. The reason that it's done that way is it's easier for the developer to sell it to a builder. So they're like, oh, that's the townhouse builder. Here's your section. Here's a single family house builder. Here's your section. Here's a commercial. And so it's just for expediency and ease of selling it. You have to coordinate if you mix things in. It takes a little bit more effort and cooperation and all of that. But it is certainly easily done. But in the absence of them being, asked to do it, it's in some ways remarkable you have anything that's mixed in any way already. So y'all have taken that first step, which is good. Now we just got to help, guide future mixing of things in a way that comes off as more of a natural growth and organic extension of the town or city, rather than developments and subdivisions. You want neighborhoods and places,
I feel like West Haven works well, and it's done exactly like that.
Very mixed.
West Haven has commercial, it has townhomes, and it has single-family homes.
Yeah.
And it works really well that way because it's walkability.
Yeah.
Not everybody who lives in Fairview has a car, and it's much easier if they can walk to get groceries. Or I mean, I know the people who live here. We see the people who walk all the time. They don't have vehicles they drive, so it's nice to have the sidewalks and in a mix where they can live somewhere and walk and go get their groceries and bring it back.
Yeah.
And I like the West Haven type situation where you've got commercial and townhomes and single family homes where people who may not be able to afford the single family homes, they can live in a townhome until they can be able to afford that. Because I know my son, he graduates in a year, he'll be living with me because there's no retail rentals. And there's, he'll make too much for the low income. There's no retail rentals, and he can't afford the single family home.
Yeah.
So that's our dilemma, is trying to figure out how to provide for our single moms, our teachers, our firemen, our police, who make too much for a low income situation, but they can't afford our houses out here. And my son will be working out here. Why should he have to live in Dixon, White Bluff to be able to afford something if he's working in Fairview? He wants to live in his own community that he grew up in.
Yeah, well, a lot of
So-
times what you see, the solution that a developer home builder may propose is, well, we're gonna do something that is sort of in that workforce housing range. And it's gonna be, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, just like in the other neighborhoods, and it's just gonna be cheaply built and poorly designed. Instead of, like, what if we did something that was equivalently good and nice and well-designed, but it had 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, or that's where you start, and then you move to the next place and the next place. So like in the Armistead project that I showed you all last night, we have everything from really large estate homes to tiny house lots. So literally a house that's probably 600 square feet. And we even have farmhand housing. So in one of the barns, we're gonna put a hayloft up there, not literally hayloft, but where would have been.
You're gonna live in the hayloft.
Where the farmhands can live and, on the site, in the neighborhood. And so some houses will be, multiple millions of dollars, and some will be affordable enough for a farmhand to live, and everything in between. And
And I
so.
think if we could get Park East to go that direction, that we're not against development, but what they're proposing for Park East is coming 20 feet from existing homes on each side of their homes, instead of destroying some people's lives. And they are just all cookie cutter, just at townhomes, and it's not what the direction we want to go. We'd love for it to be where it's affordable in some sections and seniors and, responsible development. Because I think we already have the southern subdivision going in across the hall that's all tall and skinny. So I think what you're talking about would be ideal for, they changed the name of Park East, kind of an insult to the neighborhood. It's kind of making fun of our community, but,
I thought it was a dog park.
I know, that's right. So, yeah.
Okay.
We are
So-
30 minutes over.
Yeah, we're half an hour over, so sorry about that if anybody was counting on me to end the meeting. But this is normally how we do, we just kind of talk until people run out of things to say. But actually, we do have to start sketching on things and drawing and stuff as well in between meetings. So this has been very helpful. Thank you all for your input and your time. We have another meeting at 6 o'clock.
6:30.
Wait, we have to pick the time.
5:30.
I think it's about
And yeah,
Yeah.
ends at
5:30
6:30.
to
That's
talk
what.
about
Transportation.
And we'll probably, I'll give you a preview. 100 has too much traffic on it, and it's only getting worse.
And T-Dot was out here this morning at our State of the City
Oh, good. Well,
address
you can tell us
and,
at that meeting. what
and,
they said.
and spoke
So,
about what's coming up with transportation.
Perfect.
Just say anything about
Not in this 10-year plan, not in the current 10-year.
The light will be in fall of 26. And it could be sooner if they can get the poles quicker. What's determining Cumberland 100 and Crow Cut? What's determining an 8-month process of that is getting the poles for, yes.
They're back ordered.
They're back ordered 8 months. So that's 8 months of that time frame are poles.
Can I say one thing before the poll? These first things, once it was put in City Hall, I love them. If we could keep that same look.
You're talking about the green ones?
Yes.
I love those. I do love those. I was very sad when the ones at Bowie Commons were put in and they were silver. I know. I love the green ones. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Concept.
Yeah.